All right, so let's dive into Exodus 40. Imagine you're tasked with creating a dwelling, like a house, but for God.
Oh,
It's a big job, right?
yeah.
That's exactly the challenge the Israelites faced. They had to finalize the tabernacle, a portable temple described in Exodus 40.
Mhm.
And it wasn't just about putting up walls. It was about crafting a space designed for the divine.
It really is fascinating. We often think of the physical and spiritual as separate, but here in this story, every single detail,
Mm.
the furniture, the fabrics, they were all imbued with a deeper meaning, transforming a simple structure into something sacred.
Yeah, and the level of detail. God gives Moses very specific instructions for everything, how to assemble it, where each item should go, even down to consecrating it with anointing oil. It's like an ancient blueprint,
Yeah.
with each element serving a practical purpose, but also holding a deeper symbolic meaning.
And that intentionality is key, right? It wasn't just
Yeah.
about blindly following orders. It was about actively participating in the creation of this sacred space,
Yeah.
a point of connection between the Israelites and God.
That's such a good point. It's like even today we have that same need
Hmm.
to imbue objects and spaces with meaning, like lighting candles for loved ones or creating memorials to honor significant events.
Exactly. We're trying to bridge the gap between the physical and the intangible to make those abstract ideas concrete and real for us.
And in Exodus 40, one of the most powerful examples of this is the anointing of Aaron and his sons as priests. It wasn't just a simple job assignment. It was a consecration setting them apart for this crucial role, a role imbued with spiritual significance.
Right. It's like today, when we think about the inauguration of leaders, the swearing in of officials, even those moments when we personally dedicate ourselves to a cause or a belief.
Yeah, it's about marking those transitions, solidifying commitments,
Mm.
connecting to something larger than ourselves.
And in the case of the tabernacle, this dedication, this consecration, it leads to a truly awe-inspiring moment.
Tell me about it. The moment the tabernacle is finished and a cloud descends, representing God's presence filling the space. I get goosebumps just thinking about it.
It really is incredible. It's a reminder that sometimes we need those tangible symbols to make the intangible real for us. And that's why we build monuments and create art and perform rituals. They help us experience the abstract in a more concrete way.
And this cloud, it's not just a one-time event. It becomes this guide for the Israelites leading them through the wilderness. Like imagine looking up and seeing a literal sign from God showing you the way.
And on a deeper level, it speaks to that universal theme of seeking guidance in our lives. Whether through prayer or meditation or trusting our gut, we all yearn for that direction, that reassurance that we're not alone in this journey.
So Exodus 40, it's about so much more than just building a structure, right? It's about intentionality, dedication, creating sacred spaces, and that constant search for connection and guidance.
Absolutely. It's a story that resonates with us even today.
Yeah.
Because those human needs, those desires, they're timeless. Now, while we may not be building physical tabernacles in the 21st century, the principles behind it, creating those spaces of meaning, dedicating ourselves to something larger, seeking guidance, those are all concepts that still hold incredible relevance for us today.
They really do. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next, how these ancient concepts from Exodus 40 can actually be applied to our lives today. So stay
Yeah.
tuned. We'll be back right after this. We're back, and it's amazing to me how something from so long ago, like Exodus 40, can still be relevant to our lives today.
It is amazing. I think it just goes to show how powerful these basic human needs and desires are. That yearning for connection, for meaning, for guidance, it's something we all share even thousands of years later.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we
Yeah.
talked about the tabernacle as a sacred space. So how do we create those kinds of spaces today in our modern lives?
Yeah.
Especially when we don't have a physical structure like that to work with.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Sacred spaces, they're not limited to buildings. They can be anywhere. Any way you can cultivate that sense of reverence and peace and connection to something bigger than yourself.
So it could be like a meditation corner in your home, or a spot in nature that makes you feel a sense of awe, or even like an online community where you connect with people.
Exactly. It's all about creating an environment, whether it's physical or virtual, that just fosters those feelings of connection and reflection.
And it doesn't have to be anything fancy, right?
No, not at all.
Just even small rituals can make a difference.
Absolutely. Like think about lighting a candle or setting a really beautiful table for dinner. Those small acts can turn the ordinary into something special and give it more meaning.
So intention is really key here. And that reminds me of the anointing of the tabernacle and the priests. What's the takeaway there? That act of setting something apart for a higher purpose.
I think it's a challenge for us. to think about how we dedicate ourselves, our time, our energy to something meaningful. Just like the Israelites dedicated those objects and people to God, we can dedicate our actions, our lives, to something that resonates with us deeply.
So it's not just about our jobs, right? It could be our relationships, our passions, our values.
Exactly. It's about finding your purpose and approaching everything you do with that intention.
And let's not forget about that cloud that guided the Israelites.
Yeah.
What a powerful image of divine guidance. But in a world without a literal cloud, how can we find that same sense of direction?
It starts with trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, that inner voice, and having faith in something larger than yourself. Whether you call it your gut feeling or your spiritual connection, it's about recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
So we need to be open to guidance, and that can come from a lot of different places.
Exactly. It could be through prayer or meditation, maybe spending time in nature or talking to a mentor. The key is to just stay open, be curious, and willing to follow the path that unfolds.
So even though we don't have that giant cloud leading the way, we can still find our own path by trusting ourselves and having faith in something bigger.
Exactly. And that's where the true power of Exodus 40 lies. It's not just a story about a building project, it's a timeless story about the human search for meaning and connection and finding our way in the world.
It's inspiring to think that these ancient ideas can still offer so much guidance today and help us create more meaningful lives. So we've been talking about these big ideas from Exodus 40, creating sacred spaces, dedicating ourselves to a purpose, finding guidance. But how do we actually put those into practice in our everyday lives?
Well, the first thing to remember is that these principles, they're not bound by time. They're about fundamental human needs and desires.
So it's not about copying what the Israelites did. It's about understanding those core needs.
Right, like take the idea of sacred space. It wasn't really about the tabernacle itself. It was about what it represented, that connection with the divine.
So how can we create that same sense of sacredness
Yeah.
without building a portable temple?
It's about being intentional. Think about a place where you feel at peace, connected to something bigger than yourself. Maybe it's out in nature or in your home or even an online community.
So it's about the feeling, the energy we bring to it.
Yeah, exactly. And remember that idea of consecration. We can apply that to anything in our lives. Our work, our relationships, our passions.
So it's about dedicating ourselves to something.
Right, and approaching it with that sense of commitment, of seeing it as more than just a task.
And what about that cloud that guided the Israelites? How do we find that guidance in our lives today?
It starts with trusting yourself, that inner voice, your intuition.
So paying attention to those gut feelings.
Yeah, and being open to guidance. It could come from meditation or prayer, or even just spending time in nature.
So Exodus 40, it's not just a story about a building. It's a guide for creating a meaningful life.
It reminds us that even in our busy modern world, we can find ways to create those sacred spaces, to dedicate ourselves to something bigger, and to trust that we're being guided.
It's really powerful stuff. Or we hope this deep dive into Exodus 40 has given you some food for thought. Thanks for joining us. Tell us, Trump.